Well, Robin, thanks for joining me today on Zoom. I'll let the folks who are watching know that you and I have been friends for a long time, and we've served in the Oklahoma Annual Conference as clergy together for many years. And now you are doing some different things. And I'll let you introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your journey becoming someone who can help in situations of mental health challenges.
Great. Well, thanks, Charlotte. It's great to be with you in this context as well as the many other contexts we've shared together. And 20 years of serving in the Oklahoma Annual Conference. And about 6 years ago, I made a transition into the mental health field as a mental health professional. Left the local church and service in terms of working and being appointed in a church, but very much still connected to the ministry of helping people, which I think has always been the root of my identity as a pastor. So it's great to be here with you and share how ministry has been an evolution of my life and now finds its way into the realm of mental health, serving as a licensed professional counselor. So thank you.
Yes. And, you've been a great resource for me when I've wanted to know more about the mental health field. And I've been preaching a sermon about how it is that we speak these words in the local congregation and in the church and do that without shame. And I just thought maybe you and I could have a conversation about what is it like when you begin to realize, I think I need some help. I think what I've been doing isn't working anymore. And I just wondered from your perspective, how would you know if someone needs to seek outside help, needs to see someone else besides the kinds of coping mechanisms that they've already been using?
So really, when we recognize in our own lives, it's more than just a bad day or a bad week.
Mm.
How would I know that I need to tap into some resources? Um, so I think one, being able to be self-aware to go, are the things I used to enjoy no longer bringing me joy?
Mm. Yeah.
Would be one way to look at it, or so that might be an internal experience. And then maybe asking the deeper, curious question of ourselves, um, is there anything that's happened in my life, a big change, a big transition? And believe me, it can even be something that culturally we say is a good change, like retiring or having a baby, or moving or anything could something that might be framed as a positive change in our lives. But I'm a firm believer that all change in our life brings some kinds of loss, and that loss can stir up a lot of feelings. But the first thing is, has anything changed in my life? And one, is that change causing me to lose motivation in places I've had motivation before in my life? And the more deeper part is it disordering my life? We hear that word disorder related to mental health, but I think the reason it's there is that I used to be able to do this and now I can't do this. But particularly change, loss, um, anytime that um, we find that it lasts longer than about 2 weeks, that we might need to, and we're holding it all inside. I think a lot of
Mm.
times things rumble around in our heads, and just the cathartic experience of sharing it with someone. And I always say sharing it with someone that has no skin in our game, because
Really?
yeah, because think about it, the first time you tell someone who loves you or cares about you or is invested in you that you have a problem, what do we do as human beings?
Oh, I want to fix it.
I want to fix it. That's right. And so the role of therapy is not fixing. It's
Mm.
not fixing. And that's actually quite a relief for people. And it's interesting to watch people walk into therapy who you can tell this anxiousness in them, like they want it fixed in an hour. And so at the end of that first hour, which is really a lot of assessment, to just go, okay, I think we're building a relationship here. And I want you, and we just start peeling the onion back and unpacking. And what are the lenses through which I see my life and I see things? But, you know, this, we all know ourselves better than anybody else, if
Mm.
we're honest. And so that reality of not allowing the shame of, I'm okay. And in our culture, when we say, I'm fine, how often do we ask someone, how are you doing? I'm fine. It's good. And a lot of
And we
times we're
don't
not.
want him to say anything else.
No, we don't want them to say it because then we feel like we have to fix it. And we also don't want to burden. I hear that so often. Oh, I just don't want to be a burden to other people.
Yeah.
And so, the beautiful thing about going, gosh, I know I really need some help because I'm not living the life I want to live. One scripture that just resonates with me that I rest in often is John 10:10. I have come to give you life and so that you might live it abundantly. So
Yeah.
a question I ask myself often is, am I living abundant life today? And what does abundant life mean for me? And it might look different when I'm in the trenches of raising children or my body is aging. But I think that being human is really difficult. You know that that's my mantra is that being a human being's got lots of challenges and it's okay to need help along the way. So noticing that maybe some of the things that are coming at us or some of the things that are happening in us are keeping us from being the person we truly want to be. And I mean, another thing that would be an indicator would be changed behaviors.
Mm.
Like I used to do this and now I do this. I used to pop out of bed every morning and now I don't ever want to get out of bed. To just pay attention to the change in our behaviors, um, and especially if they're destructive behaviors in our life, that might also be a place where we might need to go and ask for some help. But it's more than a bad day. It's more than a bad couple of weeks.
And
Um,
I know the first time I sought therapy, I was scared. What's this person going to do to me? And I wonder if you could speak a little bit about like the person that's seeing you really is just a compassionate presence. But what should somebody expect if they've never been to therapy? What should they expect?
well, the realistic thing is probably a lot of paperwork at the beginning. So don't let
Okay.
just because we are professionals. If someone is and there's an exchange of service, so there is an expectation of crossing our T's and dotting our I's within the ethics that we take our licensure. But I think as well as that first appointment, it's probably going to be a lot of what do you want your life to look like? What have you noticed? Identifying those issues. So it's a lot of asking questions, setting out the framework of what the therapeutic relationship would look like. So that first appointment, the therapist probably talks more than the person who walks through the door. But listening is a big part of it. I always say to people, did you feel heard? Especially if they've come and sat with me after they've sat with someone else and feeling heard, feeling a connection, um, recognizing it's going to take some time to build that connection. And it's very awkward to be vulnerable in front of another person.
Yes,
And
that is
that's
true.
where, yes, and that's where therapy is its most successful place is when we can just you know, good, bad, ugly, warts and all, put it out there because we really want to address what's going on inside and how did I get here and what are the lenses through which I live my life that maybe I didn't even realize. Maybe something happened in my childhood or along the way or yesterday that has really changed my life. And I need to get to the root of how it's continuing to affect me. And that takes time. So to be patient with the process, to know that that person is not there to judge you, but to walk with you. But the real work is the work of the client, not the therapist. That we learned early, you should never work harder than your clients. And so sometimes people walk into therapy and they're not ready to do the workout with their stuff. Just like sometimes people hire a physical trainer and then they ghost their trainer because they're really not ready to work out that much. And so the idea that it takes time and that it takes work and commitment, but that we're all worth being the best version of ourselves, feeling whole and not fragmented on this journey of life.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So if I'm somebody who's not ever been to therapy, I know for me, it's really hard to know how do I find someone to see? What what should I expect in terms of looking that person up or finding a therapist?
Yeah. Well, word of mouth is always great if you've got a friend
Okay.
that's a therapist. And sometimes people, I love that we're living in a world where people will talk about mental health more and there's not so much stigma and shame around it. So sometimes a lot of the referrals I've gone through the years have been word of mouth from someone sharing my name. But I think there are there's a great website called Psychology Today where you can read the profiles of therapists and put your zip code in and find locally. I know that your church has a list of vetted therapists. I will say I think there's a shortage in the state, and so there might be a little bit of a waiting list, but don't give up. And the other thing is you don't have to see someone in person. And that is such a wonderful thing, especially in rural communities. Telehealth that really came to life during COVID has made us realize if you had asked me before 2020, can I do therapy over a screen? I
Yeah.
would have said, no way, you can't do it. You got to look at body language. And the reality is what we're doing right now, you can do in the therapeutic relationship as well. So if you're living in Stillwater, you don't have to see a therapist in Stillwater. And so there's lots of resources. But the other thing I would say is if after 2 or 3 appointments it doesn't feel like a good fit, it's almost like you're dating. Maybe it's not a good fit, but you could read about that person, spend a few appointments with them, and then it's okay to say this might not be a good fit and to keep searching because to me, and I think in our field, we would say the most important thing is the therapeutic connection, the relationship.
Huh. Okay.
Walk in every week or every month and um, whatever you need to talk about, you feel heard and valued in that hour together.
Okay. Well, that's really helpful. And I know you've spent a lot of years in the church. And I just wonder, what would you say to me as a pastor or to people in the church that I'm serving? How can we be helpful for those who are experiencing a mental health challenge?
Well, definitely talking about it like you are is amazing because we know statistically over the last decade there's been a lot of work done on this, but recognizing that 54% of people at some point in their life will deal with some type of mental health challenge, even as simple as losing a loved one, which is a mental health challenge to go through
Yeah.
grief. It's not a diagnosable one, but it is a challenge. It's a great human challenge. And so removing the shame around talking about I might need some help and I need some tools, just like we would about anything else in our lives. But to be a supportive community, to be non-judgmental of people, and if someone disappears from the congregation or from your circle in the church, to reach out. And sometimes it's because someone's going through a divorce, or maybe their child or their grandchild has gone to rehab, or their spouse. And there's so much shame, particularly around addiction, still in our culture. But we know that addiction is a byproduct of other things, that nobody wakes up and chooses that behavior as a way of life, but that we use substances and processes to deal with pain, to try to protect ourselves from feeling deep feelings that are scary to us and overwhelming. And so and then show up just like we would if someone gets a cancer diagnosis. What do? We call and say, hey, can I bring your family a meal? Church, we're so good at showing up, with a great funeral and a funeral dinner. But statistically, we know it's usually after the first month, and the world gets quiet. And also, it gets complex because we have to go figure out the bank accounts, all these, take this death certificate everywhere and we don't even have the energy because our life has been so disoriented. So, asking, staying and following people after there's been loss or change in their life to not forget about them. That mental health is not, we don't wear that when we're struggling with our mental health like we might a cast on our leg, or if we're going through chemotherapy and we lose our hair, but we are wearing it on the inside. So being
Mhm.
really attuned, maybe this person used to always come and sit here and they're not here anymore. I should wonder about that and wonder if they're okay. So having the eyes and the hearts, the ears to pay attention to the community around us, but to have those trained teams of people as well, because the other thing is, you're right, we naturally just want to fix. Well, have you tried this? Maybe you should do this. And that's really not helpful sometimes. So asking the question I love to ask is, particularly when I'm not in the role of the professional roles, to say, how can I meet you in this?
How
Yeah.
can I meet you in
How
this?
can I meet you in this right now?
I
You're
love
struggling
that.
with depression. or you just had a baby and everybody's telling you you should be so happy because you just had a baby and you're really struggling with how to incorporate this into your life. How can I show up for you right now? Do you want to go take a nap and I'll hold your baby for a couple of hours while you just go take care of yourself? So there's all those life changes, particularly the ones that culture says are happy changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all change holds some form of loss. But chronic illness, death, all those places that don't really have a clear, we're not wearing it on the outside, but it's heavy on the inside. And I think the other part is it's okay to, in the community of faith, support also means that somebody has to be willing to be vulnerable and share that burden. You know, someone said to me once, a problem shared is a burden halved.
Oh, I like that.
I do too.
Because
And
it's
so
true. It's really
we're
true.
scared to share our problems because we think it makes us weaker or less than, particularly in a Western culture that says survival of the fittest, be strong, we cultivate independence, autonomy. And really the best cultures are one that foster community and care and that it's okay not to be okay. And
And
we're all
that should be the church. We should be one of the places where it's okay not to be okay.
well, and that the church is like a hospital, that there are a lot of sick people walking around in the world. And until we walk into the hospital and see a doctor or get a diagnosis, can we begin to heal? And think about that in our spiritual and our mental life, emotional life, until we walk into a therapist's office or a church that is warm and embracing, that we can feel seen, heard, and valued. So I think the most important thing is that people feel seen, heard, and valued. You know as well as I do all these years in ministry, people will visit churches and they'll say, nobody talked to me. Nobody looked
Yeah.
me in the eye. They all talked to the people around them, but I was new and no one recognized me. And and then they tend never to walk back in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know it's uncomfortable to go and start up a conversation with someone, particularly someone you've never met before. But I think the greatest thing the church can be, especially today, is warm, non-judgmental, curious welcome to
Mm.
another human being.
That's so great. You're so right. Yes, let's do it.
Okay, I'm in. Let's do it together.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for spending a little time with me today, Robin. And, I know this is going to help people
Well,
because we do run into those rough places.
thank you for being my friend. And if I can be a resource to you, to your congregation, you know that I'm here for you. Appreciate you,
Thanks.
the work
Thanks.
you all are doing.